of minutes. Kindly take your seats. Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon, Chief Justice Alexander G. Gesmundo, Associate Justice Ramon Paul L. Hernando, Associate Justice Amy C. Lazaro Javier, Associate Justice Mario V. Lopez, Associate Justice Jose Maidas Marquez, Associate Justice Antonio Col Jr., retired Supreme Court Justice and current JIB Chair, Justice Romeo Callejo, PhilJA Vice Chancellor and retired SC Justice Mariano del Castillo, court officials, and guests present this afternoon. I'm Attorney Brian Hosaka, Chief of the Public Information Office and spokesperson of the Supreme Court. I will be your host in our memorial service this afternoon in honor of retired Associate Justice Antonio Eduardo B. Nachura. First off, we would like to extend our heartfelt condolences and deepest sympathies to the family of Justice Nachura, especially to his spouse, Mrs. Conchita Sison Nachura, children Ana Lu and John, Joy and Andy, Ryan and Abby, Andy and Luzette, and to his grandchildren. This afternoon, we celebrate the life of a truly special individual. Word of the passing of Justice Nachura spread quickly last Sunday, March 13. And in this digital age, it is as fast as a couple of taps on our smartphones. And with the news of his passing, sadness and grief spread quickly too. Justice Nachura was a public servant par excellence who achieved the rare feat of having served in the highest offices of each of the three branches of government. During his younger days as a lawyer and after placing 7th he was appointed as Undersecretary of the Department of Education, Culture and Sports during the term of President Fidel V. Ramos. Elected 2 terms in the House of Representatives in 1998 and 2001, and served as Solicitor General of the Republic from 2006 to 2007, and as Associate Justice of the Supreme Court from 2007 until his retirement in 2011. Without doubt, Justice Nachura held positions of power and influence throughout his long public service career. However, it is truly humbling that despite this, he saw himself foremost as a teacher. He often said, "Before I was anything, I was first a teacher." Through the tributes that will be said this afternoon, we will surely get more than just a glimpse of the extraordinary life of Justice Nachura, and perhaps learn why he had said that. Let us now start our program with an opening song from the Supreme Court Choir. Thank you very much to the Supreme Court Choir. First in our program, to give his tribute to Justice Nachura is Honorable Associate Justice Mario V. Lopez.
Thank you, Brian. The Chief Justice and the Associate Justices, family and friends of Justice Eduardo Nachura, and those who are joined together in sorrow. I extend my heartfelt condolences to Manang Chit, Mrs. Conchita Sison Nachura, to the members of the family, Hazel Analu, Catherine Joy, Raymond, and Antonio Jr. The ever-loving family of Justice Nachura. May our Lord comfort you with his presence and peace, knowing that Justice Ed is far from a world of grief and sin, with God eternally shut in. The greater life commended, the greater the lost, the endeared, and loved ones who are left behind. I am one of those endeared and have lost somebody in my life. Justice Nachura was my professor, my mentor, my counselor, my dean, my co-faculty, my chairperson in the 2009 bar examination. He was my friend and my drinking buddy. Now, you will feel how I feel now that he has gone. and no words can ever describe what I want to express today and do justice for that kind of endearment that has left in my eye. Wala ho sa script ko yun. Ewan ko, nag-extemporaneous ako but wala sa script. Maybe that is what Justice Dane Nachura said to me. Sometimes yung mga magagandang bagay bigla na lang lumalabas. I am proud to say that I am one of Justice Ed's protege and mentee. He endorsed my appointment to the Regional Trial Court. He was then a Lakas Party stalwart, and my appointment was signed by a party mate, then President Ramos. Again, I was appointed to the Court of Appeals through his intercession. President Arroyo, of course, you know how Dean Nachura was close to her. I got his appointment through Justice Nachura. And then to the Supreme Court. He was then a member or one of the higher officers in that Federalism Committee. He again recommended me to the president, now the incumbent, Rodrigo Duterte. I don't know if he is here, he would again appoint me to a higher position. Unfortunately, there is no higher court than the Supreme Court to where I will get appointed. But maybe, in God's will, I will get a bonus through his intercession. Nawala na ako. Indeed, I succeeded because of his unselfish support. Truly, he was the flame that I was drawn for warmth. It was to his light that I looked for inspiration. Now, the fire has gone out, and his absence pains me no end. Justice Nachura was a sui generis educator. There was never a dull moment with him because he breathed life and enthusiasm into the cold pages of law books and cases with his vast knowledge, pragmatic experience, practical jokes, and anecdotes. He tirelessly taught us constitutional law like a sacerdotal thing, and as if the survival of humanity depended on it. His objective for his students to ace constitutional law in the bar examinations, even when his voice was already hoarse and trembling from too much lecturing, he never stopped. He would strain his vocal cords to be heard, and he would never skip his classes. As dean, he later became chairman of the Arellano Law Foundation. He implemented the birth of lawfield.com, a free legal website of Philippine laws and jurisprudence. The great justice not only gave freely of himself, but encouraged everyone to seek out nascent qualities in themselves and nurture their development in others. He would always say, this I vividly remember, we are not like chickens limited on the ground. We are like eagles that soar and fly at high altitude. And of course, like a Bedan, a lion roaring with authority. He was a firm believer that God gives us dreams to deliver us from mediocrity and to reveal ourselves to the world. He was a larger-than-life figure in the legal and judicial career of his many students, advising, cajoling, and reminded us that he expected greatness and he demanded critical thinking. But as he would say, everyone knows this, kayang kaya. No one in the law school is unfamiliar with this expression because this encouragement had profound impact on our confidence. I am one of them. And every time he would see me, he would say, Mario, kayang-kaya mo yan. I will bet you will excel in the bar examination. Unfortunately, I did not. Then he said, mabuti na lang hindi natuloy. Otherwise, kawawa naman si Manang Chit and and my children. I will never forget how Justice Ed exploded with seething expletives. Of course, not like our president who was very serious. He was jokingly saying those expletives. He was discussing abomination of the Constitution by some, quote and unquote, hinayupak. Then he would close his chinky eyes, exhibit a wrinkled forehead, adjust his eyeglasses, and gasp for air after laughing and ranting with so much passion. Of course, he can do that because he had the ascendancy, moral and legal, to comment and criticize, especially on the issues of constitutional law. After all, he has served and has left his mark in the highest levels of all three branches of the government. By every measure, he was a superb and amazing public servant. The Lord Jesus blessed Justice Nachura with opportunities to be country's good servant because he was God's first. He was very prayerful, always acknowledging his need for God's guidance and grace. He was the legal counsel of the convent of the Sisters of Mary for several years. On many occasions, he sought the prayers of the nuns for strength and for his bid to be voted as member of the House of Representatives. He ran and found himself suffering the slings and arrows of politics he lost in the 1987 and 92 elections. Little did he know that the sisters were praying for him to remain as their counsel. He jokingly concluded that the sisters prevailed more than his. Nonetheless, he won as representative of the 2nd District of Samar in the 1998 election, a bid which he kept from the nuns until the results came out. His prayer for victory was also granted in the 2001 election. As a legislator, Justice Ed lived the Constitution. Whenever he attended congressional meetings or public hearings, he would cite jurisprudence, including the GR number. This to the amazement of his fellow congressmen. His presence ensured that bills would pass legal muster. One of the many significant laws that he co-authored is the Absentee Voting and Registration Act. Two, he co-authored a bill to increase the salaries of the judiciary personnel without any idea that one day he will be one of the beneficiaries. And true enough, he was appointed by the President as a Justice of the Supreme Court. But before that, he was Chief Legal Counsel and then a Solicitor General. Napakabilis. In just several months, he was appointed Solicitor General. As a jurist, he was compassionate in several decisions. I would remember his ponencia Te versus Te. That was a decision that modified the application of Molina. He traced the history of states borrowing of psychological incapacity from the Catholic Church and found the application of Molina too very stringent, like a straitjacket, which forced all sizes to fit into and bound by it. One of Justice Nachura's favorite Bible verses is Micah chapter 6, verse 8. He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you, but to love justice, to show mercy, and to walk humbly before your God. The day has come when our dear Justice has heard the Master say to him, well done, good and faithful servant. Justice Nachura has won the crown before us and has demonstrated to us that indeed he deserved to be in the loving embrace of the Lord Almighty. He has proven it with his proverbial faith and obedience. Justice Nachura, kayang-kaya, you can get your eternal rest with the Lord Almighty. Thank you for everything, Justice Nachura. You will greatly miss. God bless.
Thank you very much, Justice Mario Lopez. Such a beautiful tribute coming from a student, co-professor, and co-faculty member, and a mentee. Next, to give her eulogy and tribute is a colleague who worked with Justice Nachura in the Office of the Solicitor General. May we call on the Honorable Associate Justice Amy C. Lazaro Javier.
Colleagues, family, friends, gentlemen, and gentlewomen, good afternoon. Justice Antonio Eduardo Bermejo Nachura. I need not introduce this great man whose life we celebrate today. A revered Supreme Court Associate Justice during and even after his incumbency. The premier constitutionalist, a well-loved and born educator, a masterful author, a most sought-after lecturer, one of the outstanding solicitors general of the country or that the country has ever had, whose record reeks of victories. One of the luminous chief presidential legal counsels the office of the president has ever had. The pride of summer, whose presence in the House of Representatives during his term as a member was strongly felt during plenary sessions, committee hearings, and in terms of actual bills passed. A dynamic undersecretary of the then Department of Education, Culture, and Sports. Every law student, every lawyer, and every one person who loves constitutional law knows him as a deeply admired author of the small green book that made them understand, appreciate, and pass constitutional law in law school and in the bar and win their cases involving constitutional issues. Manong Ed, as I fondly called him, when he was not looking and listening, has been a significant part of my journey, both as a person and as a professional, starting from the OSG to the Court of Appeals and up to the Supreme Court. For the 8 times I aspired to be included on the JBC shortlist for the Supreme Court, he constantly stayed by my side and relentlessly campaigned for me with the members of the court and the Judicial and Bar Council. He would even walk the stairs up to the JBC offices and back down the stairs whenever the elevator was not operational. So I'd like to ask Justice Mario, did he do the same for you? That's why he has been to me a friend, a benefactor, and a brother. He was one of the happiest and jubilant souls when I eventually got appointed to the Supreme Court. He was a devotee of his namesake and longtime patron, San Antonio de Padua. Before the pandemic, every first Tuesday of the month, he and his one and only beloved Manang Chit would without fail attend the Novena Mass at the shrine of San Antonio de Padua in Pila, Laguna. Whenever they did, he would call and happily tell me that my intentions were included in his prayers. Like his patron saint, Manong Ed was a teacher par excellence. By the way, speaking of the Sisters of Mary, he also told me that those sisters had always called and referred to him as attorney, and he never demanded from them that they call him justice. Manong Ed has had a distinct ability to simplify the most complex legal principles, cases, and provisions of law in such a way that even the most mentally challenged could understand, appreciate, and get interested in. He is as praiseworthy and beautiful inside out, just like San Antonio de Padua. I will never forget his raspy voice, which sounded just like Louis Armstrong, who sang the classic, It's a Wonderful World. For Manong Ed, age was just a number. No one could ever guess his real age because he eternally looked youthful. Perhaps it was his generous smiles, his light humble and grateful heart, his deep love for teaching, his contagious laughter, his ideal family life, and the woman he loved the most that kept his looks eternally youthful. He was awesome yet endearing and truly gentle. He never defamed or badmouthed anyone. He had a brilliant mind, a gentle soul, and a sincere heart. Humility and compassion are his greatest virtues. Before the pandemic, we would regularly meet up and tell stories over breakfast or lunch at Hizon's at least once a month, before or after his class at the Arellano School of Law, where he served as chairperson emeritus. When Manang Chit prohibited him from teaching again because she wanted him to preserve his voice, we would meet up at Cravings along Katipunan, which is close to home, to Saviorville, where he lives. We would exchange notes and lectures on the subject over which we shared the same passion and fascination, constitutional law. We catch up, tell stories of our days in the OSG and families. Each time after lunch or breakfast, he would again, without fail, gift me with a big box of my favorite hizon and saimada. Once, and when he and Manang Chit and I were dining in a restaurant, a young lawyer came up to him and raved about his book and lectures. As always, he timidly smiled and thanked the lawyer. But that time he said more. He introduced me to the lawyer as a member of the court and the chairperson of the 2024 bar exams, and that he would be my examiner in political law. Manang Chit felt uncomfortable. I could remember that. But I assured her I did engage him already to be my political law examiner right after I got appointed. I also assured him that since it was only, I also assured Manang Chit not to worry because since it was only 2019 and 2024 would still be 5 years from 2019, no actual case or controversy may result from Manong Ed's announcement. Since the lockdown in March 2020, I'd asked him many times if one of my best friends, Presiding Justice Amputang of the Sandigan Bayan, I could visit him at home. But he would gently decline, reasoning that his children had set on him the no guest and no going out rules because of his comorbidities. According to him, the strictest among them was his home doctor, his son-in-law, Dr. Andre, the husband of his daughter Joy. Even then, we still frequently called each other. And I am not exaggerating when I say that in our own way, we'd become a part of each other's daily habits. A few months after his birthday in June of last year, though I still kept calling and texting him, for me, things began to feel disturbingly different. He was no longer responding to my calls and texts, which was so unlike him. So one day I called Manang Chit and confided to her the different feeling I was having about Manong Ed, not responding to my calls and texts. I asked if there was something wrong. Manang Chit was gracious and candid enough to inform me that Manong Ed was in the hospital. I think at that time he had a bad fall and had to be operated on. And so that was how I understood the story of Manang Chit. From then on, I no longer called him so as not to tax him too much. I just kept sending him texts. How are you, Manong Ed? How are you, Chip? When can I visit you? Take care of yourself because we still have to do the bar in 2024. Malapit na yon. But to this text, I rarely received a response. I also would call Manang Chit from time to time, and though Manang Chit would not tell me straight, I sensed that Manong Ed was not in good shape. especially when, to my constant question whether Rolly and I and PJ Ampi could already visit him, or at least if I could already talk to him, her constant response was he was still too weak to entertain guests at home or even talk to them. He remained in our nightly rosary prayers. Rolly and I would every single night whisper a special prayer for his fast and full healing. My heart was in pain each time I thought of him and the fact that I knew he was ill. When finally I received the sad news that Manong Ed was no longer with us, I shed tears because my good friend, mentor, benefactor, my boss, my cheerleader, my support system, and guardian angel will no longer be there to have breakfast or coffee with me at Seasons or at Cravings or just to leisurely talk about life and endlessly talk about our shared passion and fascination for constitutional law. And most of all, he is no longer around to become my political law examiner in 2024. Manong Ed, you have touched my life many times over, holding my hand and staying by my side as I walk down the road leading to my destiny. From the time we worked together in the OSG and up until I got appointed to the highest court of the land. If I were to walk that road again, I will look for you. And only after I shall have found you that I will walk down that road once more, with you still by my side. I cannot thank God enough for you, Manong Ed, nor are words enough to express my thanks and gratitude to you for the guidance, inspiration, mentoring, friendship, and for being one of my God-sent wingless angels who came by whenever I needed an angel the most. God has blessed you with a life well lived, a life lived for others. Manong Ed, we cannot restrain you from leaving now because God already needs you home. We who are left behind and whose lives you have magically touched in more ways than one may struggle with our selfish thoughts, for we wanted you to stay so we could still touch and hug you and talk to you again like we used to do. But heaven is your home now, where there is no more pain, no more fears. So let us give you life's greatest gift of letting go. Oh, how much we will miss you, Manong Ed. Our hearts will carry memories of the precious love you gave us. For now, we who are left behind still have to work and do a lot of work to build upon your advocacies and make the world better as you have imagined it to be. As I was wont to unabashedly say, Manong Ed, I love you to the moon and back. Maraming salamat sa iyo. Till we meet again in heaven, Manong Ed, but not so soon. Maraming salamat.
Thank you very much, Justice Javier, for that heartfelt tribute. Your words showed how special Justice Nachura was indeed to you. To give us a song, may I call on the Supreme Court Choir again?
nella vostra pace.
Lord, make me an instrument of your peace.
Dove c'è odio, lasciarlo seminare l'amore.
Where there is hatred, let me sow love.
Dove c'è ferita,
There is injury,
perdono. Dove
heartache,
c'è dubbio,
there is doubt,
fede. Dove c'è
where
disperazione,
there is despair.
sperare. Dove viene
Where there is
resa,
darkness,
illuminarsi
Lord,
in piena
where there is
tristezza.
sadness,
Gloria.
joy, oh, divine Master, grant that every not so much little soul has to console.
Be understood as to understand.
To be loved as to
As to
love.
love, for it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned.
It is in dying that we are born again.
It is in dying that we are born again.
It is in dying that we are born again to eternal
Signore,
life.
mi rende uno strumento nella vostra pace.
Lord, make
Il Signore
me an instrument.
Thank you very much, the Supreme Court Choir, for such a moving song. Next to speak is also a student and a co-professor of Justice Nachura, possibly a mentee too. The Honorable Associate Justice Ramon Paul L. Hernando.
The Honorable Chief Justice and Associate Justices of the Court, the Honorable Romeo Calvero, JIP Chief, this is Corona, officials of the court, the family of Justice Ed, Ma'am Chit, his children, Analu and John, Joy and Andre, Ryan and Adi, Andy and Rosette, his grandchildren, Gabe, Vito, Edric, Peggy, Sarah, Leo, Atom, and Ion. Justice Ed, my sir, introduced me to brandy. Not when I was his student in constitutional law in San Beda. Thankfully, I would say. But when we were already colleagues in the law faculty of San Beda. His favored brand during those days was Carlos Primero, the premier brandy of its time. It is not at all surprising that even in his choice of liquor, Justice Ed settled for no less, for he had an abundance of excellence in practically every facet of his life. We all know, of course, the extent to which he had reached the greatest of heights in his professional life. But he had always loved to say that long before transitioning to public service, he was first and foremost an educator. Indeed, he had become a legend in the academe by the time he had become my professor in the late 1980s in San Beda Law. It was there as his student that I first heard his now mythic exhortation about passing the bar. Kayang-kaya nyo yan. Quiz lang yan. And so, kayang-kaya has become the most appropriated, or I would say misappropriated, of his trademark incitements among his students. It has even found its way in our unbanked deliberations. Because not too long ago, I heard Justice Mario Lopez utter it in one of our deliberations. And hearing it immediately brought to mind my dear Justice Ed. But more than initiating me into brandy, Justice Ed led the way for me to embrace the Nachura brand of public service. One that was steeped in the golden rules. You work hard, you do your best, and be kind to everyone. The good Lord must have been playing favoritism when he blessed Justice Ed's parents, Cirilo Maga Nachura and Florencia Conge Bermejo, with the gift of Antonio Eduardo Bermejo Nachura. Among all his God-given talents and traits, I would say that it was his kindness to everyone that stood out above all else. And with it always came the innate sense to help others. All you had to do was give him a call that you needed help. And when you came to see him, the sparkling, warm smile and the soothing greeting gave him away. It meant that the thing you were asking for was sure to come your way. And that was a story that I had with Justice Ed, my personal experience. He has touched so many lives, and mine has been one. I remember that when I was aspiring for the regional trial court of San Pablo City, Laguna, we were then already colleagues in the Faculty of San Beda Law. I remember that he was good friends with then Congressman and later Justice of the Court of Appeals, Danton Becer of San Pablo City, Laguna. And so I called him, Sir, nag-a-apply po ako sa RTC ng Laguna. So sabi niya, alam ko na kailangan mo, puntahan mo ako. So I went to see him in Congress, and he was in the middle of deliberations in Congress that time. But when he saw me, he peeled himself away from the session and entertained me. And he saw my papers. And he called over Justice Danton, then Congressman. And Justice Danton, Congressman Danton told him, pero Congressman Eddie, meron mo po akong i-recommenda sa San Pablo, paano yan? Sabi niya, hindi, recommend mo din ito para tabla, ako nang bahala. And so it came to pass that I got my first posting in the Regional Trial Court of San Pablo City, Laguna. Because of Sir. A few months into my service in the court of Laguna, my executive judge there was suspended and so had to give up the EJ. And I was designated the EJ because the other judge, there were 3 of us there, had to retire. And so I was left with 3 courts to preside in just my 5th month as a trial court judge. So I went to see then Court Administrator Presbitero Velasco. I told Justice Presby, Sir, hirap na hirap po ako sa San Pablo, Laguna. 3 pong hawak ko, 5 buwan pa lang akong judge. And Justice Presby told me, asked me, Judge, ilang taon ka na ba? Sabi ko, Sir, 37 po. Sabi ni Presby, kayang-kaya mo yan. It was the only time that the phrase, kayang-kaya mo yan, left me discouraged. Because I was still in the Faculty of San Beda, Congressman Eddie, I think he was now CPLC, noticed my sullen mood in the faculty. So he would come over, kumusta ka na sa pote? After a few weeks of that, sabi ko, laging nagko-complain ako. Sabi niya, ba't di ka magpa-transfer sa Quezon City? Because he knew that I was residing in Quezon City. Sabi ko sa kanya, sir, 2 taon pa lang po ako sa Laguna, hindi po papayag ang JBC niyan. Tapos sabi niya, hindi, akong bahala dyan. Apply ka na, pa-transfer ka. So I did seek a transfer to Quezon City. And as always, Justice Ed delivered this promise. I was transferred to the Quezon City RTC. And I suspect that he had a hand in the particular branch that I was appointed to. It was a commercial court, the branch with the least number of cases, only about 80 plus from the thousands that I had in Laguna. And I also suspect, not suspect, but he always remembered that I got a commercial court because in late 2008, he called me up and said, Hoy, Ramon, umanda-handa ka na. Bar chair ako next year. So I was not thinking about anything baka lang magpapatulong sa kung ano-ano dyan bilang bar chair. But then he said, oh, gusto mo commercial law examiner? Siyempre, wala nang paligoy-libol. Of course, sir. And that was the first of the 3 times that I became examiner in commercial law, in the bar examinations. Hindi po natapos doon. Before the results of the bar came out in 2010, 2009 bar po yun. He was telling me, because the GMA administration was in its last months, he was telling me, oh, mag-apply ka na sa Court of Appeals. Sabi ko, sir, 3.5 years pa lang po akong judge ng RTC. Again, the exhortation was there. Hindi, kaya mo yan. Baala ako sa iyo dyan. Little did I know that I was the only RTC judge that he had engaged as an examiner in his 2009 bar committee. That included no less than our Chief Justice, who was then Sandigan Bayan Justice. Chief Alex was examiner in remedial law. Then CA Justice Mario Lopez in criminal law. Then CA Justice Noel Tiham in legal ethics, together with then Sandigan Bayan Justice Samuel Martirez. So I was the only RTC judge. I did not know that. But when the results came out and the off-taking took place, umabot na po dun Justice Ramon Paul Hernando in the Committee of Bar Examiners. He made sure that it would be that way. In the years after his retirement, I could not see more of him because of my posting in CA CDO and CA Cebu. But I made sure to be in touch with him through telephone calls and Christmas visits to the family's residence in Saverville. In 2018, I got appointed to the High Court. And a day or two, I think, after my appointment, he went to see me in my chambers that was still then in the Court of Appeals. And when I saw him, I gave him the tightest of hugs. The tightest of hugs. The one that I would normally give my own father. And I actually heard a bone crack in him when I tightfully embraced him. He was so happy, as if it was the success of his own son. Sir, one could easily be stunned by the sheer presence of Justice Ed. He was such a prominent, high-ranking government official, and at the same time, a political law rock star. He was just the humblest of persons.
And real humility can only be seen and known in those who are truly brilliant. His book was deemed Holy Grail in political law. It was in paperback. When law books are usually hardbound, it used grainy book paper instead of the white glossy or semi-glossy finish because it cost less. As a result, the book retailed for half as much as its contemporaries. This was, I believe, deliberate on the part of Justice Ed. It just showed the true educator that he was. He wanted knowledge to be within the means of all those who desired it. There's a common thread about Justice Ed when he's spoken about and talks about among mentees. And it is that he spoke softly. He helped everybody. He was the kindest in every sense of the word. He never lost his temper. His generosity was the purest and most consistent that I ever beheld. Ask him, and you shall definitely receive. He liked to give, and he never counted. He also never told all his charitable gastos to his beloved wife, Ma'am Chi. As a boss and mentor he was, you could not call it any other way. Very cool. He would tell you what he wanted, and he trusted you to deliver it without breathing on your neck. It is empowering that someone of his stature and eminence absolutely trusted you with anything. But you will not receive comments of good job or great work, flattery from him. He will just say, okay. And somehow his way of unquestioning acceptance of your work made you feel that you really did something right. He just had a knack for praising good work without actually praising. Another trait of his that he naturally practiced through deeds, not words. And he listened. Of course, he was a god of Philippine political law, but he would be the one to reach out down to you, not the usual other way around. Bosses like that exist only in our imagination. But lucky for us who worked alongside Justice Ed, he let us live the dream mentor-mentee relationship. Sir walked quietly but with a palpable presence and purpose. While he occupied very little space with his lean frame, he left all of us with a gaping hole in the legal world and in our mourning hearts. While he never made an effort, he is irreplaceable in our hearts and too unforgettable. I will remember him for always. And we will remember him. Great people like Justice Ed will always be remembered. His life was a gift. Even now in death, I believe He will keep on giving. Sayonara, sir.
Thank you very much, Justice Hernando. What an appropriate statement. You just said, humility is seen from those who are truly brilliant. Now, to give his tribute, may I ask the 27th Chief Justice of the Philippines, the Honorable Alexander G. Esmundo.
Thank you, Attorney Brian. Dear colleagues, co-workers in the Supreme Court, good afternoon. Isang taus-pusong pakikiramay sa mga naulila ni Justice Ed Nachura. Maaaring ulitin ko ang sinabi ng mga naunang nagsalita. Sasabihin kong mas masaswerte sila kaysa sa akin sapagkat nagkaroon sila ng tunay na pagkakataon. Makasama, makatrabaho, si Justice Ed Nachura. I met Justice Ed Nachura when he was appointed as Solicitor General. That was our first meeting. Through a common friend, he requested that I meet up with him because I came from the office of the Solicitor General. He wants me to share with him the workings of the office of the Solicitor General. I did, and I prepared for him a briefer. And then he thanked me for that. We did not have any contact thereafter. Of course, I was a member of some of the committees in the Supreme Court at that time. So from time to time, I will come to the Supreme Court to attend meetings. In one of these occasions, I met him along somewhere in the hallway. So he asked me, kumusta to each other. I said, I'm here for a meeting in a committee. And he told me, why don't you drop by my office? I have a smoking lounge. So gladly I said, sure, sir. I'll be there in a while. So I frequent his office. Even if he's not around, I had the rare privilege of entering that smoking lounge. Anyway, soon thereafter, I received a call from him. He told me, can you drop by my office? I said, sure, Justice, without asking the reason why. So I came and met him at his office, and we seated together in that smoking lounge. And then he was holding some kind of paper folded like this. And then he said, oh, sige, kung ano, may lakad ka, okay na. Then he inserted this folded paper in my pocket. I said, what's this? Basahin mo na lang pag lumabas ka na sa Supreme Court. So I opened it as soon as I left the Supreme Court. And lo and behold, it says, instructions to bar examiners. So, he designated me as a bar examiner, but he scribbled there, remedial law, without any further discussion. And since then, we would talk from time to time the progress of my preparation on the exam questions. And then finally, I submitted to him the required number of questions. And then the exams came, and he told me, you have a deadline. I said, Justice, that's unfair. Bakit? Yung mga nauna, isang buwan ng partida nila mag-check. Ako, remedial law. Last Sunday. Tapos, the same requirement. O sige, lalay ka lang at I will tell you kung kailan talaga ang deadline. Then he would call and ask me, o, kumusta yung mga examine mo? Huwag ka namang masyadong mahigpit. Ang boses niya. Sige sir, huwag ka mag-alala. I will be very, very reasonable. Because he was the first bar chair who adopted the two examinees for each subject precisely to expedite the release. That was an innovation. Anyway, let me read to you what I have prepared for this afternoon. It takes a whole lot of genius and a great deal of luck to have the opportunity to serve at the helm of the three branches of government, and only a few have been blessed with this rare combination. Associate Justice Nachura served as an Undersecretary of the Department of Education, representative of the 2nd District of Samar, Chief Presidential Legal Counsel, and Solicitor General, until finally he reached the apex of his career as Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. But what many often overlook is that to be able to reach one's destiny, these gifts must be complemented with a lot of hard work. While I may not have been fortunate to work with him during his brief stint as Solicitor General, I became a witness to his diligence when he chose me as bar examiner in remedial law in 2000. There, I likewise saw his dedication, his drive for excellence, and his facility to work with people and affection with people he worked with, expressed in a carefully modulated and throaty voice, caused most probably by a habit I share with him. The privilege of being a bar examiner, I must say, greatly enhanced my credentials. Thank you very much, Justice Ed. Justice Natura's genius is unmistakable. He can easily pick up the idea, quickly understand the intricacies and complexities involved, and immediately come up with a defensible and if not impregnable answer. In fact, a story is told in the OSG about Justice Nachura preparing his opening speech for an oral argument in a tax case in the Supreme Court, just a day or two after he was appointed Solicitor General. As the lawyers were casually discussing the arguments of the case, he opened his laptop, typed, seemingly oblivious to the exchanges. After some minutes, when the lawyers turned out quiet and looked at him to formally start the meeting, Justice Ed had finished his opening statement. The positions which Justice Ed occupied reflected his love of the law and the legal profession. He was committed to education and taught for several years in different law schools, serving as Dean of the Arellano Law School. A constitutionalist, he authored several books on political law, which to this day serve as a handy reference on the subject. He even used his stint as representative to grant additional compensation to justices, judges, and those with judicial rank, RA number 9227 or the Saj Law. And while Solicitor General, he made use of his experience in Congress to have a law on the restructuring of the OSG passed, RA 9417 or the Nachura Law, in record time. Justice Nachura simply had natural understanding and practical knowledge of how things work in the bureaucracy. It is but fitting and quite moving that his family decided that Justice Nachura spend some time with us for a year in the Supreme Court, where he cemented his legacy as one of the legal luminaries in the country he is home. Thank you very much and good afternoon to all.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice. For our final song, I'd like to call our Supreme Court choir again.
May the road rise to meet you. May the way be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, the rainbow soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand.
Thank you, Supreme Court Choir. Now, can we ask for a response from the family of Justice Nachura? I'd like to call on Attorney Ana Lu Nachura Gallardo to say some words.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chief Justice and the Associate Justices of the Supreme Court, the retired justices, and honored guests. Our family was last here in 2011 during the retirement ceremonies for my father, and I remember how amazed we all were at this great hall. I didn't imagine we would all be back so soon for another culminating event. On behalf of my mother, Chit, my brothers, Ryan and Andy, and my sister, Joy, I thank you, Honorable Chief Justice, Justice Ramon Paul Hernando, Justice Ami Lazaro Javier, and Justice Mario Lopez for sharing your memories of my father. Knowing how valued he was in this hall of great minds gives us consolation and pride. But more than the decisions he wrote, more than his leadership, and more than any of the titles he held, I am glad you remember him the way we wish him to be remembered. A kind and humble public servant, a teacher and a mentor, and a good and loyal friend. For this final honor, this valedictory and remembrance that our children can tell their children about, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Attorney Gallardo. After hearing all the speakers this afternoon, there is no doubt that Justice Ed Nachura is looking at all of us from above, most especially to his family and friends deeply in grief, cheering, kayang-kaya niya yan. Again, condolences to the family of Justice Antonio Eduardo B. Nachura. May he rest in peace. Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you.